All right, guys, today on the episode, I am super excited to have Chris Schwartz with us today. And Chris has authored a new book this year. I think it came out in June of this year, 2019, called Ruffhouse: From the Streets of Philly to the Top of the 90s Hip Hop Charts. And titled that because Chris is the founder and CEO of Ruffhouse Records. If you're unaware of Ruffhouse or kind of their history, they sold something along the lines of, during my research, I think I heard 120 million records worldwide.
Actually, I'm sorry, it's actually 138.
138
million. Yeah, because what happened when I got that number, believe it or not, like well over a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And there was a couple things that they didn't take into account and everything, and then the updated number was 138.
138 million. Thank you for the correction.
Yeah.
And it's easy to imagine him reaching those numbers if you consider the acts that were on Ruffhouse when we're talking about the Fugees, Cypress Hill, Criss Cross, Lauryn Hill, and so on. But he has deep roots in the music industry, going as far back as managing. I'd like to talk a little bit about Schoolie D. You were a manager for him. Experiences in the book. I actually went through the book, Chris. I consumed it in about 5 days. I love it.
That's what everybody says. Everybody says 5 days.
Yeah,
it's a perfect read.
Magic number. But being on set or at the house for the Roxanne Shante video, all that stuff really struck a chord with me because that's the era of music that I grew up in, and hip hop was my passion, is my passion. Was the only music for me. So this book was really exciting for me to go through, especially as a what I found kind of funny was, as a white teen growing up in suburbia Ohio.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I thought me and my couple buddies were on the cutting edge because we were riding around 85 listening to Schoolie D Saturday night. Parkside, 5-2, PSK, Gucci Time, all of that. And I thought we were the only ones. But after reading your book, I hear you start talking about that Schoolie D had this mass appeal with white audiences, and that you were even booking him at rock clubs and white dance clubs. So what was up with that? What was the appeal of that, you think?
You know, I have to tell you, I still haven't quite put my finger on it, but I will say this, okay, that if you looked at hip hop up till then, okay, hip hop was primarily very gimmicky. You know, you had obviously the early groups and Sugar Hill Gang and Curtis Blow and Rapper's Delight, all that stuff. But if you looked at the narrative of all the early hip hop stuff, it was a lot of very gimmicky, happy rap about, you know, girls and stuff like that, right? When Schoolie came out, he was the first gangster rapper, and he wasn't what we visualize today is the stereotypical hip hop gangster. When you think about hip hop, if you visualize a gangster in the world of hip hop, you're thinking about a guy that wears a hockey jersey, you know, baggy pants, you know, like something different. When he was starting his whole thing, he was wearing, like, you know, the silk shirts and the gun tucked in the waistband, the alligator shoes, more of the classic 70s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the songs, we recorded at a little 8-track studio in the middle of the city that was actually created to record the Philadelphia Orchestra. And there was no outboard gear, right? But it was dirt cheap. So going in, they had nothing to like, no outboard gear for mixing. However, they had a plate reverb. And a plate reverb, for listeners who don't know, is it's a big wooden box. It's about 6 feet high and about 10 feet long, and it stays. It's like a big slice of bread. You know what I mean? It's like, it's thin, but it's tall and long. So inside it is a huge spring, and what this device did in the early ages of early days of recording, like movie studios and recording studios and everything, when they wanted reverb on something for like the voice of God, you know, this is what they'd use. And so it's a really honest, big reverb. There's nothing processed about it. And then the engineer put a gate on it. So if you listen to the drum track on PSK and Gucci Time, there's never been anything like it. Nothing up to those records. And I think it was his delivery, the whole idea. And another thing too is that people also don't know this. On that first Yellow record, the PSK record, he played a lot of those drums live. You know, he plays music. I mean, I wouldn't call him a virtuoso, accomplished musician, but he knows enough to get what he wants to get done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then the fact that you had the magic marker yellow labels, right? Anytime I've talked to anybody about these records, like in the last 10 years, just like reminiscing and everything over the, you know, the fact that this was really truly the first independent movement in hip hop, was that the labels come up. You know, the labels were, you know, they're kind of ghetto, but it was a felt tip marker of the spaceships and everything. And, you know, you've seen millions of record labels like them since, but nothing like it before. And then, of course, you know, his artwork on the early albums too, the PSK and the Gucci Time. It's Saturday Night, and, you know, just really awesome.
His artwork?
Yeah, he did it.
He drew it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think
he's
I recall.
An amazing artist. Last year he did an art show. He sold $200,000 worth of art in one night.
Wow.
Amazing art. I will send you I did a little teaser trailer for the first single that we're doing from his new album featuring Ice-T and Eazy-E. And the artwork is actually, here, I'll show it to you. It's pretty dope. He did like a group of panels, like there's 7 or 8 panels, one for each song. Here it is. Video boost. All right. Can you see that? Probably not.
No.
Where should I be holding it? Right there?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And what this does is that there's that's Ice-T. And that's the DJ from Slipknot.
So this is a project that's upcoming?
Yes.
So after all these years...
And that's Chuck D. So the song features Chuck D and Ice-T, and it's really cool. And in the song, Ice-T actually talks about how he was influenced by PSK to do 6 a.m. Yeah. And Eazy-E did Easy Does It based on PSK. Both songs, 6 a.m. and Easy Does It, when you listen to it, you're listening to PSK. And so there's a really great book, and I forget the author's name, but it's called The History of Gangster Rap. And you open it up, and it starts with School ED.
I'll make sure I find that and put that in the show notes, whatever that book is. But yeah, 100%. I mentioned I had Jimmy DeSaint on last week or the week before, and I mentioned that to him, that most people confuse gangster rap with starting with like NWA and Eazy-E. But I talked to Zachary about what you're saying. The School ED was the original, and he influenced Ice-T and so on. But I love the fact that after all these years, you guys are still doing something together.
Oh, well, you know what? You want to hear something even crazier?
Please.
All right. So I was his manager, and I ran the label, right? So eventually we signed him to Jive. I started Ruffhouse. Now he's out touring. Then he's doing Aqua Teen Hunger Force, right? Yep. He's doing he's doing all the music for the Abel Ferrara movies, King of New York, The Bad Lieutenant, you know, stuff like that. So him and I, we didn't fall out of touch, but we're both really busy. I'm running a record label. He's doing movie soundtracks and everything. His wife and my wife become acquainted. They met at a party, right? So I live out in the suburbs. I live in this big house and everything. And they invite, my wife invites his wife to come out with their young son and to swim. And he ends up coming out. We're all hanging out now, you know, by the pool and everything. And he looks over, he goes, whose house is that? I said, oh, that house is for sale. They end up buying it, right? Now, in the same year, we both have daughters that end up going to nursery school, growing up together, graduating high school. Him and I were saying there at high school graduation, you know? Yeah. It was like really crazy. You end up being my next door neighbor for 20 years after all this, after traveling the world.
That is mind blowing.
Yeah.
And it all started from one of the stories I loved in the book, from you snagging his number from that rolodex.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah. You know, I don't think I said this in the book, but you know what's really crazy was that, you know, I mentioned in the book about Richard Barrett, who was like an old time rock, you know, early rock guy, you know, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, as well as doing the 3 Degrees, right? So Richard's an older guy. He's like in his late 70s at this point. He comes in the record label looking for Ted because he, you know, he knows Ted. And I meet him for the first time. This elderly African-American gentleman, impeccably dressed, like, you know, cashmere and the silk scarf and the shoes and everything. And he hears me talking to retailers about this Bill Cosby Live at Grateford Prison record. And he's like, do you feel good about doing what you're doing? And I said, not particularly, you know, it's kind of wacky, you know, but I'm learning the record business and everything. And he said, you know, he goes, you can pay me $1 million to call somebody about those records. He said, because after you hang up the phone, they're going to be like, wow, if that guy calls back, I don't want to talk to him because they're going to be calling me about some crap, right? So I decided that day that I wanted to start my own record label, right? Didn't quite know how I was going to do or what I was going to do, but I figured, hey, if Ted could do it, I could do it, right? So I go down to Ted's office later that afternoon to talk to him about something, and I saw the record sitting there stacked up against the wall. And I knew who Schoolie was in the song, in the records were Gangster Boogie. Ted wasn't interested in doing anything for Schoolie. So yeah, I went and snatched the number out of the Rolodex. You never know, but Schoolie, if he hadn't stopped in the Ted's that day, I may have never met him. I don't know.
Yeah. I love these stories because even, you know, you're talking about this reverb and how he made the drum tracks, and it makes me want to go back and listen and try to pick up on that. And then, you know, these guys were iconic to me growing up. And so to hear all these stories and to get these behind the piece stories, funny and interesting, is wonderful. It's one of the things I loved about the book. Another funny story, and I want to talk about these stories, just touch on them because I want to tease people into getting the book, right? No hidden agenda.
Oh, tell them about my childhood. It's hilarious. Okay. It's a real gut buster. I swear to God, I almost peed my pants laughing.
You know what? Let me tell you something honest about that. The first chapter, because I think most people who buy this book are going to be coming from the approach of one of two things. They want to know the insides of the music industry, the business, or they want to know these stories about the Fugees and Schoolie D and the iconic stuff. So I just got a little bit into chapter 1, and I thought, oh no, you know, why I got to go through all this? I want to get to the good stuff.
You know what? I don't mean to cut you off, but you know what? I absolutely applaud, and I am so impressed with your honesty on that. Because you want to know something? When I was researching, writing this book, they said, the experts say that if you had something horrific happen to you in your life, right? If it's important to the story, share it, but don't beat people over the head with it. The only thing for me, and I'll let you, I'm sorry, that the reason that I kind of felt compelled to do it definitely wasn't for entertainment value, is that I didn't know how to tell the story without telling that. Because I felt like if I just jumped to like join, you know, I grew up and I joined the Navy and I started this record company, I felt like I was leaving, like I was leaving something important out, you know, but of course it happened to me, you know, so
Right.
who knows? But go, I'm sorry. Yeah. So yeah, you didn't want to have to go through the anguish.
Right. But so it ended up, I was so grateful that you took me through that and that I didn't skip it, because it not only ties into the Ruffhouse name, right? The play on that. But I felt like it connected me to you and the story on a much deeper level that I would have missed had I jumped a chapter to try to get to what I thought was going to be the meat. So I didn't know if that was a plan.
Well, it wasn't really a plan. It was like I really wrestled with it, because here's the thing: what I have in there in that first chapter is only the tip of the iceberg. And here's the thing: I kind of closed it down after the first chapter, except for occasionally seeing family members at weddings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there was a website called Pop Matters, right? And the book's been reviewed like 25 times, and there was Publishers Weekly said it was predictable rags to riches. Well, of course it's a predictable rags to riches, because I already lived it, so it was pretty predictable, right? Yeah. But in terms of this website, Pop Matters, they tore the book apart on so many levels. And the one thing they said, oh yeah, he talks about his horrible childhood and everything, and after the first chapter, that's it. He never goes back to it, right? Well, I was told not to go back to it, advised not to go back to it, research said not to go back to it. And the other thing is, it said you can't torture people, and it's like, I left so much out. What I wrote in that first chapter was the tip of the iceberg, tip of the iceberg. I mean, there were some really horrific things. So yeah, I just felt like I had to.
Well, and it set up a lot of stuff for me. And it's from a distance, it's a high view, but about your character and about the way you ran the label, right? So you had, for example, and I'm going way off topic, none of this in the notes.
No, that's cool.
For example, you had one of the bands, and I can't remember who it was, but the ringleader of the band said that he wasn't going to acknowledge you. He advised everybody not to acknowledge you in some awards or somewhere.
It was the album cover art for the first Goats record. The Odie Cato. When I saw the finished artwork, I noticed everybody was thanked except for me, the CEO, founder of the label. And I'll say this too. And I say it in the book too. The Goats, as I recall, and I'm not absolutely sure, but I think they were more Joey signing for some reason. Yet Kevin Glickman managed them, and Kevin and I were friends. So I don't know how that happened, but I'm not sure. But Joey was definitely a proponent of the Goats' first record, and he was very close working with Odie and everything like that. But it was just really bizarre, because I hung out with these guys and everything and all this stuff, and I went and asked. I said, why was my name left off? And they said, oh, Odie said that you don't want to be friends with the head of the label. And meaning that, I guess, you don't want to be friends in case somebody has to come in and pitch a fit about something. I don't know. It was really absurd, because
But yeah, that was the thing I wanted to ask you. I guess concerning that was, so we get tied to your character, and then I think that tells us a little bit how you run Ruffhouse, that you do have relationships with your artist. Many of them you do consider friends. Is that different at Ruffhouse than let's say at the big three? Should artists expect to be?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, so back then it was the big 21. There was actually 21 what we call major labels under 6 major distribution powers, right? Warner's, EMI, SEMA, CBS, MCA, all that stuff, right? So, yeah, at the major labels, there is a arm's length relationship with artists, right? Unless you're Billy Joel and you're going to go out and hang out with Tommy Mottola and stuff like whatever, But the thing is, is that the major labels, you know, back in they want to pass themselves off in this day and age as being these like epicenters whose sole purpose on the face of God's great earth is to bring great music to the world. No, their businesses all struggling to create different revenue streams and everything like that. The artists are essentially, they're artists, you know, it's not like, you know, and for Ruffhouse, for me, I think what I did was like, I was trying to create like a second family in a way. But when it's all said and done, you're dealing with people's lives, right? When you sign an artist, right? And artists can be temperamental, and actually usually the more talented and gifted they are, the more something's missing on one side of their head, right? Yeah. But as in all, you know, endeavors and, you know, in human affairs, you have awkward situations where somebody's artistic offering isn't quite taking root and being able, and you know, it's funny, Ruffhouse, we usually did 2 albums on just about every artist at the very least, you know, because we were a development label, we were an artist advocate label. But I've had artists that we've had to drop from the label, unfortunately, but they ended up living in my guest house for 1.5 years. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't think we've never had an artist walk through our doors who could say anything really bad about us. And even the guys up at Hot 97 New York, I was on Ebro.
I saw that interview.
Yeah. And they said, you know, it's funny. Jizza was talking about every label, and he said the only label he didn't have anything bad to say about was Ruffhouse. Yeah.
And it looked like they made an honest attempt to try to think of someone who said something bad about you. And they were like, we can't come up with anybody.
You know what? They're cool guys. I thought they were being totally cool, right? But a lot of people who watch that interview thought they were being kind of like, you know, I don't know. I thought they were saying all the right stuff, you know?
Did you
get a vibe?
Here's the vibe I got. Here's what pissed me off. They didn't read the book.
I know. He read some back cover synopsis that somebody else wrote. And you know what else was really weird? The camera's talking to them, right? We're like you and me, right?
Yeah.
What I didn't know, the camera that was looking at me was up on the wall. So I had no idea that I'm actually looking at them the way you and I are looking at each other.
Right.
But it was like the camera's looking down. So when the commentary is like, how come this guy won't lift his head? Well, right. Why did somebody put the camera like that? It was like ridiculous.
I saw him at one point adjust your microphone, pull it closer, but I was thinking, how come no one tapped you on the chin or moved the camera?
No, it was the camera. I was actually sitting up, like looking. They could see me. They could see my face, but the camera was down from the top, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good thing you cleared that up, because some people, you know, may read your first chapter 1 of the book, then watch that interview and think, man, he's really damaged. He never really recovered. He can't even lift his head.
There was a commentary on from that interview, you know, where you go online and look at it.
Yeah.
And some woman called me a culture vulture. And I was like, all right, well, what can I tell you?
Yeah, but yet
go talk to Scott. He grew up in Ohio listening to
the
PSK Gucci time of his buddies in 1985. Ask him if he thinks he's a culture vulture.
Right. And culture vulture that they couldn't come up with one person who would speak bad about your label, that you still maintain relationships with Schoolie and Lorne and all these people.
Oh yeah, Cypress, everybody.
Yeah, that's amazing. So a lot of that you took me on not only the people that I love, but people I forgot about. So reading the book, I had to stop at times and go Google some music that I hadn't heard in 20 or 30 years. 7A3, Coolin and Cali. I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
I love that song. One of the stories you told too, the Piper, Cheeba.
Oh yeah.
So you tell that story was actually the demo was recorded by Shock G.
Yes.
So I went back and listened to it, and it was like, oh my gosh, it is so a Shock G song.
Yeah, I know. And you know what's crazy? It's like everybody loved the original demo. it was really like, it was compelling because it's got the voices and everything like that. And then when Cheeba came in and he couldn't do it, and we finally got it out of him that it was Shock G, I said, that makes sense. Because the Humpty Dance was the biggest record at the time, you know, and the Digital Underground was huge. It was platinum record on Tommy Boy. And that whole odyssey and that whole experience was something else. But you know what? We came out of it pretty good. I'm going to tell you why. You know, we sold a respectable amount of 12 inches. But the other thing was that Russell Simmons himself, when he saw the video for The Piper, he thought it was the most innovative hip-hop video he'd ever seen up to that point. By Rich Murray did it. But here's another crazy thing, too. It was our first record with Sony, right? So we would go up there, and we weren't sure at the time who was who. So we see this guy in a suit, right? His name was Kid Leo. Kid Leo Trevelgante. He was from Detroit, like radio guy, right? So he was head of adult contemporary and jazz promotion, right? But we thought he was like an executive, like, you know, one of the big guys running the label. So we show him the concept for the video because we you know, just talking to him. He goes, you know what? You should get some little people in it. You know what I mean? Like dwarves and stuff. Mm-hmm. And we're like, okay, well, this guy's important here. Let's get these guys, right? So to get the video done, we're showing it to Don Einer. It's like, yeah, the little people, that was, you know, Kid Leo said we should put that in. He goes, Kid Leo. I said, yeah. He goes, he's adult contemporary promotion. He goes, why? What were you talking to him about the video? I go, we don't know. We thought he was, you know, that's our first year there. You know, it was funny.
That's great. See, it's sometimes just luck and accidents, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned the Goats. We talked about them. I actually was not familiar with them. But I went back and listened to some of their stuff, and I like it. I like it a lot.
You want to hear an amazing trivia fact?
Drop it.
So, Crisscross, Cypress Hill, Fugees, our biggest artists, right? Millions and millions and millions and millions of records. The Goats, right, sold 400,000 records worldwide between two releases, between Tricks of the Shade and No Goats, No Glory. The Goats, over the next 10 to 15 years, received more fan mail worldwide than all those groups combined.
Wow.
And fan mail coming from Africa, New Zealand, Eastern Bloc countries. It was the craziest thing. And these people, for some reason, that record really struck a chord with like really like disenfranchised communists. Like it was just really crazy. And the thing is, the Goats really had a magnificent opportunity. They had a great live show. Everything about them was fresh. And it was just really cool. But, you know, sometimes, again, in human affairs, you have variables that just, you know, happen. And
sure,
unfortunately, they imploded.
Yeah, sad because they had a great sound. Another great story.
Look at the videos, by the way.
Yeah.
So watch Rumblefish and Typical American.
Yeah,
they actually opened up Woodstock. You know, the second Woodstock. You know, the new festival they did. They opened the opening act.
I could imagine their stage presence was awesome. Their live show was.
Oh my God! Donnie Einer, the president of Columbia, and Tommy Mottola said the Goats will be Columbia Records' Rage Against the Machine, because Epic, the sister label, had Rage. The other thing was the Goats had something that no other Ruffhouse act has ever had. They had the unconditional support and love of not just the American company, but the European companies as well. I actually had a singer named Ben Arnold, like a singer-songwriter guy. Same thing. We put it out on Columbia, right? Columbia had another singer-songwriter artist who was managed by the same people who manage like some other big artists. So they decided, well, we can't really promote two, so we're just going to go with the guy of the big management company, right? But as it turned out, that guy ended up getting dropped, right, after Ben Arnold did, yet Ben Arnold's records sold throughout Europe, and he went over and he stayed on Columbia Records over in Europe. And a head of A&R told me he was walking into the Sony music office in Paris, and he's with Don Iyer, the head of the label, and there's a floor-to-ceiling thing of Ben Arnold on the thing. And he goes, "Who is that?" And the guy said, and Don, he said, "I don't want to talk about it."
That's funny. Another great story that I loved, had me laughing actually, was you're describing the first time you're in this room for an audition with the Fugees, and Clef goes all the way down to his boxers, takes all his clothes off. So I'm picturing this wild scene.
You know, I wish we would have somehow memorialized that on film, because it was so crazy, right? But here's something weird. Number one, he didn't need to do it. He didn't need to do it, and I'll tell you why. They had already auditioned for every major and independent label that mattered.
That was going to be my question.
We were their last stop, so this was it.
Did he go all out because of that, or
Clef was do or die on this?
Okay.
And here's the thing, and we talked about this on the Ebro interview, is that every label passed, and I kind of understood why they passed. They passed because it looked like a mess, right? But there was one element. First off, and I say it in the book, and I say in interviews, I don't remember Lauren from the audition at all. There were 2 girls there, and there was a bunch of guys. There was like 7 or 8 people, right? Clef had an acoustic guitar, right? And he had playing over beatbox, right? And I figured he was from the West Indies, like maybe he was from, I don't know where. I even thought maybe they're Jamaican. I wasn't sure. I didn't know they were Haitian. But I knew this, that in the Caribbean community, the acoustic guitar is a really important instrument, right? And he could play it very well. Look, here's the thing. Him and Praz, they're dancers. They're classically dancers. They juggle. They're like acrobats. It's really, because that's what you do. When you live in the poorest country in the world and you're entertaining for money, you do everything, right?
Yep.
So he's playing this acoustic guitar over this beatbox, right?
Yeah.
And I'd never heard this before. It was really like something really unique. And then the great thing is that he knew how to play it, right? And it was fresh. And up till this point, I was really hating live hip hop, because when you went to a live hip hop show, it's MC Mashed Potato and DJ Gravy Boat, and they're 2 dancers who are supposed to distract you from the fact that there's really nothing going on the stage, right?
Yeah.
That's what hip hop had become. Okay, they're just showing up to the gigs, doing the songs, and boring, right? I thought, you know what? I don't know what this is. I don't know what these translator crew, that's what they were called at the time. And Joey and I were like, we don't know it, but you know what? It's interesting, cool, and fresh. And it's funny, Joey said when they stopped playing, and it's like we're both sitting there, and I said, we should really sign this group. And Joe's like, yeah. So David Sonnenberg said, so what do you guys think? Joey said straight, Joey goes, I don't like it. And David Sonnenberg said, when Joey said that, he goes, wow, I got respect for this guy. He's being like straight up. He goes, I don't like it. I love it. And they were so happy, man. It was awesome.
Oh, wow. That is a great story. I want to kind of transition, because I don't want to take advantage of your time.
No, Scott, we're good.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do.
All right. The stories are great. But I do a lot of mentoring of young artists. And so I want to make sure that I ask you some questions, music business related. And I took a quote from chapter 2. And in that chapter, you said, I realized that popular music did not require you to be a virtuoso musician, but rather to have the ability to tell stories through music.
Right.
Do you still believe that for today's market?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you something else too. I'm not a big, huge, massive dance music fan, right? But like the description of somebody who's a top line writer, right, in dance music. Well, if you go on to, if you Google that, the definition of a top line writer, it says it's not to be confused with the songwriter, right? Because it's not considered songwriting. And I'm like, okay, you have chords and everything, and somebody's creating a melody over the chord to complete the song. How is that not songwriting? But really what I want to say is, in terms for young artists starting out, two things. Before we get into songwriting, is that if you're not creating your own market, you're just following, right? And I believe that, if you look at the success of my label, every artist on the label, when they came out for what they were at the time within this genre of music, was doing something so unique and so compelling that they created their own market, meaning that they created their own fan base. They weren't doing something following somebody else's fan base. And that's why I always thought the major labels at the time sucked at hip-hop A&R, because these A&R people and the heads of departments, they had no real connection where the rubber meets the asphalt and the audience and everything like that. And the other part of it, if you have a group, and whether you're a rock band, a hip-hop group, or a dance act, I don't care what it is, you want to, at the very least, make sure there's somebody, either you or you and your partners or you and the group together, bounce ideas. Somebody needs to be a songwriter. You know what I mean? Because songwriting, and even like for Joe Nickel and I, we talk about it all the time. We were we wanted a sense of musicality in our records, and it's about songwriting. And it's a really important part of the thing, and it takes a long time for some people to really get the hang of it, right? Paul and John started out very early. George had to catch up, but George Harrison eventually became a great songwriter, right? And I just think that if you work at it long enough and hard enough, but the greatest way to really, perfect the craft of songwriting is to network with other writers, because it's easier to write a song with 2, 3, the more people, the easier, because you get different ideas and perspectives and inspirations and that's because I have a lot of kids that reach out to me on LinkedIn and everything, and they send me their songs, and more often than not, the stuff's not that good. But I told them, I said, look, go out and find some other like-minded aspiring songwriters and work together, And the thing is, once in a great while, you get a group of people and they come up, they maybe not amazingly talented, individually, but together they come up with something that is just so spectacular. And we've seen it happen time and time again in this business. I always tell people, it's hard, it's tough, you got to be resilient, but be most expecting when you're least expecting.
Great. That's great advice. I love all of that. Okay, so another quote on music business, chapter 8. You say, how does an artist get signed to a label? There is no prescribed methodology.
Right.
So with that, and maybe selfishly I'm asking, so as an indie manager or A&R, how do I get somebody like you or somebody in any label to pay attention to an artist in this day and age?
Do what everybody else does. Just torture me on Instagram. I'm serious. Here's the thing. I just finally learned how to turn notifications off, because there's some really great people out there. They're talented and everything. But again, people want to make it. They want to do it. And they're not going to let anything get in their way, right? And this woman I'm working with showed me, she turned my notifications off, because what happened, I'm on the phone, and the same producer will send me 20 messages, But I will say this, that at Ruffhouse, okay, we never, ever, ever got some stray demo in the mail and said, oh, we're going to sign this to changing our lives, right? Usually music that I get involved with comes through usually familiar sources,
Network,
either
yeah.
managers, people, you know, it would usually be retailers, DJs, just somebody. Now, to give you like an idea, and I talk about it in the book, the way that we came across the Fugees, and you know, it's funny. Questlove, he used to be an intern for me. I was on his show, his podcast, and we figured it out. There's a kid named Hassan Sharif. He's an actor, right? This kid of dreads. He's an actor in New York. He had given a copy of the Rap Translators cassette to a woman who worked for me, who I was engaged to at the time, who headed our retail promotion, right? So he gives her the cassette. She bugged me for, I guess, 3 or 4 months to like, you really got to listen to this. I finally listened to it in my car. I didn't know what it was. I thought they were from the islands, you know, whatever, but it was unique. So, and they were managed by David Sonnenberg, who managed Meatloaf and everything. So Joey and I went up to New York to see him. So we know what happened, right? Mm-hmm. So, but there you go. Rose met Hassan at the record release party for a soundtrack we did called Zebrahead, right? And where we released the first non-single, right? So it was at a party. It was an event, right? She does retail promotion. She's really not A&R, but he gives it to her. She gives it to me. 4 months later, I listen to it. We go up to New York. You know what I mean? So it's like kind of like aligning the stars. But here's a couple tips I'd like to tell people about. Less is more, right? One of the biggest problems that when we had physical product out there, right, with artists, new artists, everybody wanted to put 18 songs on their record, right? So they do a CD or an album, right? It's got 18 songs on it. So before you go out and sell it to the general public, you got to sell it to the company that's distributing your record. So, you know, major distribution. So you have sales managers, all these people. When they get a CD that had 18 songs on it, they go, oh, I'll just put this over here for now, right? So same thing with demos, right? If you're an artist, right, unless you are the next Billie Eilish or whatever, I really don't want to hear 14 songs. I don't have the time. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. There's just no time in the day to be when you're in a day of music. You know what I believe? I think if you have 2 tracks that are like awesome tracks, then send me more. Let's talk. You know what I mean? But when somebody just bombards me with a bunch of music, I have to put it aside, and then it's going to sit, and you know what I mean? So you're not really helping yourself. See, a lot of people think that if they're prolific, right, and doing a lot of music, they think it's because I hear it from managers and reps all the time, and artists as well. Yeah, I've got 40 songs, right? Let's face it. If you're 17 years old and you're a hip-hop artist or something, and you've got 40 songs, I would say it's more than likely that most of them probably aren't that good. You know what I mean? Just because it's a lot of material to be giving. That's like 4 albums worth of material you're giving somebody, right? So that's something I think it's important.
So a big thing then would be building your network connections.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously now we're in the day and age of social media. You know, it's about metrics and analytics, right? I can tell you this, that now even the major distribution powers like E1 and everything, you know, these folks are looking for 20 to 30 million hits, you know. But as I recall as a child, or as getting into music, it's not as a child, but it's like a young man, that there weren't really any books about the music business, right? There was that Kozlowski, The Business of Music, right? And then there was another book I found. It was like a small book, right? And it was stuff like, so when you go in to see the record company, you're asking this man, and you comb your hair and button your shirt. It might sound square, but you're asking this man to invest a lot of money in you, right? So the thing is, in the beginning page of the book, the music business is tough, competitive, and crowded, but there's always room for you. I'll never forget that, but there's always room for you. And I will tell you this, if I'd have known really how hard it would have been, like, you know, like how unlikely it would have been, what happened to my partner and I might not have tried. So ignorant bliss is a good thing to have, but you just got to have some smart tips along the way.
Sure. Yeah, it's something I've been trying to teach my guys and everything is a concept I call go online to get offline. And the internet's a great thing, right? It allows you and I to connect like this, which may have never happened before. But I tell them to treat it like they do their dating apps, like Tinder, right? So you can find the girls on there, but the eventual goal is to get offline and network and build relationships with these people and know them.
Yes, get online to get offline. You're absolutely right. And let's face it, the entertainment business is it's a relationship-driven business. You know, some of the challenges are that back in, you know, look, the 90s were the most profitable decade in the history of music, right? Because we had physical product. If you looked at a CD came out in 1983, created by Philips and Sony. It cost, Arthur Mann was the first person I ever knew. He owned a company called Rykodisc, right? It was the first CD-only label in history. Him and a guy from Newberry Comics in Boston went to a record store, and his brother-in-law, Doug Lexa from California Record Distributors, those three, Arthur and them, they went over to Japan and they bought back a CD player. It was 3 feet high and like 2 feet, you know, it was this big box. And they said they were like monkeys sitting around the fire trying to figure out so they got this idea. Well, let's do this. Let's go to the labels and get digital rights to put on CD. Labels, every label's like, yeah, sure, no problem. It's never going to sell. Then they got David Bowie, Elvis Costello. They bought the Zappa catalog. Then CDs come into fruition finally, right? By proxy, they become the biggest independent label in the world. They eventually end up selling to Rhino. But CDs cost $4 to make when they first came out in 1983. By the time we got to 1990, a major label was paying 67 cents to manufacture a CD. That's the jewel case, the actual CD itself, and the 4-color separated gatefold insert. Now, but here's the one thing. Albums, right, with the vinyl becoming less and less whatever, they stayed $1.75 to make an album. Because when you're pressing up vinyl and everything and making an album, it wasn't the vinyl that you were paying for. It was a machine that folds the cardboard, right? It's a packaging. So they were $1.75. CDs got cheaper and cheaper to make, yet the record industry was charging more for them. $14.99, $16.99, $17. Lauryn Hill, Miseducation, $21.99. Okay, so what happens? Now, it's about billing. It's about market share, bonuses for executives, okay? So the A&R mentality goes from creating concept, you know, concept records where you're showing an artist's body of work of great songs to, you know what? We got our 2 singles, just pack the rest of it up with some filler and ship it out there so we can do the billing, right? So what happens? Okay, the internet, it was inevitable. It was going to happen. I knew a guy named Mark Guinea in video promotion at Columbia Records. In 1984, he was talking about computers and it's going to be music and everything. I thought he was out of his mind, right? Kids suddenly realize, you know, I'm paying $16.99 for the CD and it's only got 1 song on it. Oh, well, Napster over here. Guess what? I can get the song there for free. It might not sound as good, but kids don't care. So essentially, we as an industry, not Ruffhouse particularly, but we push kids into the arms of Napster. You know what I mean? We created this thing. It was going to happen, but it happened a lot faster. If you looked at between the digital downloading and the depth of physical product, it was literally like a 1 to 2 year thing. It was so fast. So many people out of work and the mergers and everything like that because the industry ate itself.
And we've created a generation that's used to only the 1 or 2 good songs. And that's why I'm kind of having this debate with some of the guys now of kind of where their focus is on singles or on albums, because the statistics show only 16% of consumers are streaming albums.
No, nobody is. Not
because
only
we
that,
have the ability to make a playlist. We just take.
yeah, no, that's exactly playlist. And not only that, look, let's face it, we're back in the 50s. We're a singles driven music culture. Okay. Again, so let's go back to songwriting.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about your prolific output as a writer. They want the crowd pleaser single, you know? So unless you're doing a type of singer-songwriter esoteric thing that might have the chance of being a jewel, you know what I mean? Or something like that, which is like 1 in a billion.
Yeah.
Okay. You need to get into the business of, you know, writing songs that are going to impact popular, you know, youth culture in a way that, you know, and then if you get that part of it, then you'll get the touring and the merchandising and the publishing and the sync rights and everything like that. It'll all beget that. But the internet's very transient.
So you just said something. You said the you know, then the A&R just started packing it full of junk songs after they got their couple singles. Yeah. I noticed on the Hot 97 interview, kind of under your breath, you said actually artist development we don't see anymore.
Right.
So what did that look like 10 or 20 years ago, and what does or doesn't take place nowadays that maybe should? Because that's my passion. I'm more interested in mentoring young men and developing them as men and people. And you know, it's almost a calling to me, more so than the business or the music. So what is it that A&R now is lacking that should be brought back in?
All right. I'll tell you. Number one, it used to be that you could have like some great songs, but if the label came out to see your band and you sucked, that was it. Because there was, at one point in this business, this idea, and I've always had this, like, this is what I always thought about the music business, right? Because this is how it started with this wax cylinder disc and the dark ages of sound production, was that they would go and record these artists who already had these fabulous careers as opera singers and minstrelsy and, you know, whatever. And it was a side thing to go make a record, right? So the record, what was it? It was a memorialized snapshot of this artist and where they were in their artistic output in their career, right? Well, now what it is, it's that everything is about that record deal, right? But where's the live show? I remember in 1994, there was a couple of English guys who were in different bands, and all their bands got dropped. And so they got together and they got a record deal before even doing a first show, right? And it got to the point where it was this mantra, like, when does a band learn how to play live? Halfway through their first tour. And that's a thing. It's like, if you're going to be an act, it's like, we're talking showbiz now, right? Because this is what it is. It's showbiz. You're an artist. You're an act, right? You need to go out and to be able to perform and entertain. And it's just like the songwriting. That's an important part of it. If you're really serious about it, you want to do it right. Now, there's DJs and programmers and stuff, and they do some cool stuff and everything, and they can create music that impacts people, and it's great. It's wonderful, and they're talented. But regardless, it has to translate live, okay? Number one, because without that part of it, the streams won't mean anything, right?
Yeah.
And, another part about the demos, picture, please. Need a picture. Unfortunately, it's still tried and true, especially if you're dealing with the major distribution powers. Imaging and the way you perceive. Here's the thing. I'm going to say a word, description of what we always look for. And here's what the word is: self-contained. Okay? Crisscross, self-contained. You had the two kids and Jermaine Dupri. Jermaine wrote and did everything, and they rapped, right? Cypress Hill, self-contained. Muggs, all done. Fugees, self-contained, right? Historically, as a label, we were never good with projects where we had to go out and find the writers and the producers and develop this artist and everything like that. There are some labels that are amazing at it, okay? I would never be the guy to put together a boy band, right? Simon Cowell rocks at it. I just, I don't get it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's the artistry is about, again, telling stories through music, right? By writing compelling, provocative songs and being able to present them in a way that people are going to be like, wow, and that's a tall order, but kids have energy, and I think if they're channeled in the right place and they have that conviction, that, hey, this has got to make people stand up and go, wow, and it's hard, not everybody has a confidence and everything like that, but it's something to think about.
You said during your consulting time at Sony that you had a lot of those young A&R kids around you, and they were finding everybody online.
Oh, yeah, that's the A&R development, right? So what you asked me, I'm sorry, I got off track. I apologize, Scott. Yeah. Fine. So yeah.
But everyone you're working with currently, you've seen them live.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't play around with anything unless it's live, right? And I have a saying, and I'm not going to say it the entire thing because this is my whole thing, because this way, you go up to these major labels. I went to a confab for Sony in Montauk, and everybody had their groups, and there was like 30 A&R people there, right? Every single person. Oh, I found this online. I found this online. I'm like, you can go on YouTube and go down a rabbit hole and go forever, right? But I don't get the not going to see an artist live. So there's the first chink in the faulty armor of what's considered now artist development, right? They're offering deals based on views without even seeing the act, But guess what? I don't know. But what artist development used to look like was that it was, you would do demos, right? You do demo deals, and you would have the artist go play live at a bunch of different. You would help the artist develop. What happened was that you have like Live Nation, you have Clear Channel, you have these huge monolithic glass and steel concert companies, right? It used to be in every city you had your local promoters. In Philadelphia was Electric Factory. In San Francisco was Bill Graham Presents. The other everywhere. And when these big artists came through, like the Rolling Stones and U2 and Dave Matthews and everything, they suck all the touring dollars out of the market, right? So what did these companies do? They came in and they built smaller venues to develop artists. The touring industry, right now, which is like part of the lifeblood next to music publishing, decided, Live Nation now has like 6 small venues in Philadelphia, because in order to create more of these bigger artists that are going to generate the touring dollars, you have to develop them, And I saw this happening 15 years ago, and I could not believe that they're doing it, but the record labels still aren't,
Yeah. I recently was helping marketing with a group and a young artist. I told the manager, I said, we're talking about getting him interviews on podcast. And I said, we don't necessarily have to tell him, but let's set him up with 10 interviews that we know are junk, that no one listens to. We don't have to tell him, but like we were talking about before we got on here, my first 10 episodes sucked when I did podcasting.
Right.
So I said, let's get him 10 interviews out of his system, because he's going to suck the first 5 or 10. And
God, you know what? I got to tell you, Scott, that is one of the most genius ideas I've ever heard. Hey, another thing that you might want to tell these kids to consider? Putting together focus groups. Yeah. Getting a cross section of your market to sit in a room. I didn't do it during the Ruffhouse days, but later on I did. And you know what? It was interesting. It was kind of fun because, you got a song and we play it and we'd have 30 kids in there and they would all talk about it and write down their notes on the cards and everything. And it's like, it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just something that they haven't figured out. I posted on my LinkedIn today. I was frustrated that I go in these music industry groups online on LinkedIn and on
Okay,
Facebook.
yeah.
All it is self-promotion.
Yeah.
Like the guys who just keep sending those messages to you and to
Yeah.
me and to my group. But if they could build a group where you had great producers and beat makers and graphic designers and marketers and songwriters and stuff that just feed off each other and communicate with each other and assist each other, they could probably do so much more working with people around the world.
That's what I'm trying to do right now. I actually I'll tell
Me
you
too.
I'm going to tell you a crazy concept that has to do with podcast. I am in the midst of creating a Rough Nation podcast label. And the idea is that we're going to let people hear demos and we're going to let them hear development, right? And anything that you hear on the podcast, you can go to the digital hub and buy it. You know what I mean? Then we're going to branch off, like we're going to have merchandising. We're going to have they got these guys, Flex and Hated out of Delaware. They're, big producers. They did Pitbull, Rihanna, Puffy, and everything. They're doing a hip hop production podcast. Learn hip hop production, right? But the idea is that I want to create the market for what I call media marketing events, meaning so we'll be at the Hilton in Tampa on March 7th and $50, and you can come and do a Wyclef workshop. You know what I mean? Just create this thing, because I just feel that there's got to be more than a few ways to engage the consumer and to make it like an experience,
Yeah.
And I think with the legacy of Ruffhouse and Rough Nation and everything, it would be kind of cool. And you go and you get to hang out and
connect offline.
Yeah, connect offline. Yeah, again, LinkedIn, I got to tell you, it's like, here's what LinkedIn is to me. You've been away, you come home, you open up your refrigerator, and that cream that's sitting there, it's sour, right?
Yeah.
It is, but you got to smell it anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what LinkedIn is. It's like, when I go on LinkedIn, to me, it's like nobody is helping you on LinkedIn. They just want to sell you something. They just want to try and somehow get you to part you with from money, Yeah. And it takes, but the thing is, LinkedIn, the way it's packaged, it's like, oh, I can go and earn money. I can do this and that. But it's like a reverse psychology marketing ploy.
Yeah, it's funny because people will interact with me. I'll do a post giving some advice on Instagram, and somebody will send me a few messages, ask me a couple questions. I'll respond, and then I'll say, hey, you got a minute for a phone call? And they're like, yeah. And I shoot me your number, and they shoot me the number, and I call them. And I have to start with nowadays, hey, I'm not calling to sell you anything. I just wanted to say thanks for interacting with me. I'd like to get to know more about what you do. Email me some of this stuff. I'm just working on building relationships.
Well, here I tried to do a relationship. Let me show you what happened. You're gonna like this. It's funny.
And they're shocked when I hang up and I haven't tried to sell them anything.
Yeah. Well, I tried to start a relationship with somebody on LinkedIn, and when I show this to you, you're gonna laugh. Do you know who Matthew Knowles is?
Yes.
Beyonce's father,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Well, now he's Matthew Knowles, PhD, I think. PhD and MBA. So I'm very respectful. Hi, Dr. Knowles. Yeah, so he's on record label executive, professor, author, educator, speaker, music, entrepreneurship, motivational, racism, health, right? Hi, Dr. Knowles. I would be honored. Oh, you can't read this, can you?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah, you can. Let's see. I would be honored to make your acquaintance, right?
Yeah.
And he says, and you can see what he wrote there. He says, Chris, this is curse word Matthew Knowles from Destiny's Child, right? It's Beyonce's father. And I said, well, yes. I thought that was a strange response. This is fucking mad. Like, and I said, yes, I thought as much. I do not think we had ever met. His response, you forgot. I still have your pass letter on Destiny's Child when they were named something fresh. He's saying I passed on Destiny's Child when they're called something fresh, which if I did, and you know, about $750 million later, he's still carrying this grudge, which I don't get at all. You know, that's like crazy. Okay, but then I tell him, it's like, I don't remember writing a pass letter on any artist. You know how I pass on people? I tell them.
Yeah.
And I tell them why. I could never do the letter thing. It took too long. I hated it. And it was like so impersonal and everything. And, you know, I just always felt like, you know, I'm going to tell you something. I was talking last night with a group of hip hop artists, and, you know, they weren't affiliated with me, but I was in a place and they were there, and it was like, oh, Chris Schwartz and everything. Oh God, here we go. Right. So now they all want to play me their music, right, on their cell phones, which is the worst way. I hate hip hop on cell phones. I have a headache still today from it, right? So I tell them, like, okay, well, that's good, but, you know, you have this, like, keyboard thing that's repeating, and it's annoying, and it's taking away from the lyric and everything. And, you know, I think they kind of thought that I was being harsh. I said, look, I said, for me to do anything other than what I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't be doing you any favors. You know what I mean? And it's like another thing for your kids: leather, skin, leather, like resilience, right? And you know, one man's this is another man's this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there are the Fugees is a perfect example. You know, they went to every major label and were passed on, right? Ended up doing the biggest hip hop album by a group in the world.
All right, so I'm gonna go
because I can see how. I just want to say it because what they got a bit hot 97. They're talking about. Rosenberg said, yeah, I could see it too. Why they got passed on? Because they looked like too much of a mess, and the label can't identify it. They're like, they don't know when to deal with it. But the thing is, you know, where somebody sees chaos, other people see opportunity.
Sure. Yeah. No. Yeah, I agree. I can see how they'd be missed, and brilliant at the same time. Kind of in a way of closing, I'm going to go way off track here. But when I was doing my research, I saw your name come up with a company, Digitrax.
Yeah.
AI and music.
Artificial intelligence.
So I've got a theory, and I don't even know what Digitrax does.
Do you think what are they called? Skynet? Do you think it starts at Digitrax?
Not that deep.
Digitrax. Do you become self-aware of Digitrax and their place?
Not that deep, but I do wonder how much AI is going to be creating personalized music for us, just like Pandora picks our songs now, that it thinks, or Spotify, it thinks we will like and suggest them in these playlists.
Right.
That's how we discover music. I saw these data scientists that created a rock AI. It was like a death rock or one of those kind of things. And this AI sampled like the top 10,000 songs, and then it just continuously creates.
Here's what it is. Okay. The computer, the platform is called Music Builder, right? Now, first thing, AI is still a little ways off. I'm going to tell you why. It's like autonomous cars, right? An autonomous car is all computer, right? It's like the microprocessing power that you're going to need to manufacture autonomous cars for the mass market is going to be incredible. There's like 5 companies scrambling to be the one to do it, right? AI takes a lot of juice. As a matter of fact, Digitrax are in Tennessee, but they're the server farms or whatever it is, or wherever they do it is in Scotland, right? AI, the way Digitrax came about is that they were a digital karaoke company 15 years ago. And this guy came up with this concept of being able to create using the computer to recreate karaoke songs. So the computer learned, but then there's a guy from Marcus, their other partner from England. He's the mad genius in this whole thing, right? So AI is different things. So they have a thing called counterpoint calculator, right? So if you've listened to heavy metal guitarists in the studio, right, working out songs and everything, it's classical music, right? And so the counterpoint calculator will take a piece that, say, a guitar player is going, it will transpose it for him in every key, right? It's designed for professional musicians, but we think it's going to blow up with classical musicians, right? Then you have the Creator Beats, right? Creator Beats is set up to where it's artificial intelligence generated music. Like you could take a hit artist, take like Blueface, right, from LA, take a Blueface track. That song goes through the music builder and it can be recreated up to 72 times each, a completely different version every time, right? But Blueface's digital fingerprint is on those 72 versions, right? Mm-hmm. Now the user at home has 72 versions of a Blueface beat, right? He can mix and match, take the kick drum from this one, the snare from that one. Now he's created his own thing. Then he puts something on it. It becomes an interpolation, right? Like a sample, right? Yeah. Blueface owns part of it. This kid owns part of it. Digitrax is collecting the freight going both ways to the internet, right? For the streaming. So now you have what it really is. It's a way with the labels and everything to create revenue from existing content that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Now, there are other applications. I'm involved in a thing where we're taking Gould, I'm having a brain fade, classical pianist, Peter Gould, right? You know, I'm talking about the pianist, you know, he's a classical pianist, a huge body of work, the Goldberg variations and all that stuff. We're taking the catalog and putting it through artificial intelligence as a reimagining, right? Now, some people might have a problem, like, you know, well, it's not really, you know, but at the end of the day, the real application for artificial intelligence isn't going to be so much the creation of music, but you'll have that stuff. It's going to be the identification of songs and accounting, you know, accounting platforms, like that whole part of it. In other words, artificial intelligence on the music side is going to become a boon for publishers and anybody in the business of, like, you know, identifying and stream, all that stuff, and accounting and everything like that. So there's a lot of real practical applications for it. Yeah. And Lauren Hill had a whole thing about it. She said, if I ever dealt with it, it would be artificial intelligence. She said it would be artificial intelligence. I thought that was cute.
Do you think it will ever get to the point that the AI puts beat makers or producers out of work?
They're already putting themselves out of work. Have you ever seen the stuff these guys are using nowadays? You don't even have to be a musician. It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's like, I see these workstations where it will transpose everything. It'll do everything for you. The thing is about the music builder, you can play 4 notes into the music builder and it will create a symphony for you. You know, and yeah, it is what it is. You know what I mean? I feel like that because of the cost that's prohibitive in artificial intelligence, yeah, will it get there? But I think people are going to still want to hear dulcimers and church organs and, you know, electric guitars and,
sure,
you know, stuff like that. There's you know, our schools, unfortunately, they chop music programs, and it's a proven fact that if you take up music, it develops the other parts of your brains that make you good at math and English and all that stuff. So I don't know. But leave it to the Koreans, though. They'll be the first to do it. But what they'll do is that they'll eliminate the actual artist from the K-pop process, right? It'll become artificial intelligence, and they'll be like holograms.
Think how profitable that'll be.
Yeah.
So the book is on Amazon, and I assume probably everywhere else. Don't flood Chris with LinkedIn or Twitter messages or DMs on Instagram. But is there a place you prefer that people follow you and see what you're up to?
Yeah, they could follow me. My Instagram, I have two Instagrams. I have Schwartz_music, and I have Rough Nation Records Official. And then my Twitter is also Rough_Nation. And they can hit me up on Chris Schwartz at Facebook.
Who should we look for coming out on Rough Nation? Who you got working with?
I got a number of artists. First off, let's start with MC Schoolie D and DJ Code Money, right? The record is called That N-I**A is Crazy, featuring Ice-T and Chuck D. Interesting Chuck D story. Chuck was the first one to ever tweet my book and got all these people into it. I went over to Schoolie's house and I knocked on the door. I walked in. Schoolie was on the phone with Chuck D. Chuck was talking about the book. And Schoolie goes, "Oh, Chris Schwartz is right here. Talk to him," right? You know what Chuck D told me? He said, "I would not have become a rapper if it hadn't been for Schoolie D." And, he performs PSK, it shows, but he told me something crazy. He said the first time he ever came down to Philadelphia to do a show, he had the van drive him to 52nd Parkside in West Philly, where Schoolie, the songs are about and everything. And he said, I just had him parked there. And I just sat there for 2 hours.
Wow.
Like looking around it was like crazy. Like he's a Schoolie D. I never knew this. So, so we have the MC Schoolie D, DJ Code Money. We have a group from New Jersey called No Facade, 11-member hip hop group, mixed race kids. It was actually, they've been together for 7 years, although they're 17, 18. They met in middle school, 2 separate middle schools, and they had their rap cliques. And then they eventually all ended up going to the same high school, and they formed this group. I have a young singer, R&B singer named Kenya Vaughn, who just turned 18. She's from Norristown. I have a Philadelphia rapper named Del P. Positive. His whole thing is about positivity. He speaks every day. If you go on his thing, he's talking in a school somewhere every day, and he's got a real message, and it's just unbelievable. He's got a great internet following. Another R&B singer named Jay Reese from Philadelphia. Classic Philadelphia R&B soul. And let's see. Oh, Mo Banga, Latin trap artist out of North Philly, the Latin Trap Fire. And Isabella. She's a artist from New Jersey, a singer.
Okay.
God, I hope I didn't leave anybody out. It's weird. That can happen sometimes.
Absolutely. Text it to me. I'll put it in the show notes. Man.
Also Rough_Nation. And they can hit me up on Chris Schwartz at Facebook.
Who should we look for coming out on Rough Nation? Who you got working with?
I got a number of artists. First off, let's start with MC Schoolie D and DJ Code Money, right? The record is called That N-I**A is Crazy, featuring Ice-T and Chuck D. Interesting Chuck D story. Chuck was the first one to ever tweet my book and got all these people into it. I went over to Schoolie's house and I knocked on the door. I walked in. Schoolie was on the phone with Chuck D. Chuck was talking about the book. And Schoolie goes, "Oh, Chris Schwartz is right here. Talk to him," right? You know what Chuck D told me? He said, I would not have become a rapper if it hadn't been for Schoolie D. And, he performs PSK, it shows, but he told me something crazy. He said the first time he ever came down to Philadelphia to do a show, he had the van drive him to 52nd Parkside in West Philly, where Schoolie, the songs are about and everything. And he said, I just had him parked there, and I just sat there for 2 hours.
Wow.
Like looking around like it was like crazy. Like he's a schoolie deep. I never knew this. So yeah, so we have the MC Schoolie D, DJ Code Money. We have a group from New Jersey called No Facade, 11-member hip hop group, you know, mixed race kids. It was actually, they've been together for 7 years, although they're 17, 18. They met in middle school, 2 separate middle schools, and they had their rap cliques. And then they eventually all end up going to the same high school, and they formed this group. I have a young singer, R&B singer named Kenya Vaughn, who just turned 18. She's from Norristown. I have a Philadelphia rapper named Del P. Positive. His whole thing is about positivity. He speaks every day. If you go on his thing, he's talking in a school somewhere every day, and he's got a real message, and it's just unbelievable. He's like got a great internet following. Another R&B singer named Jay Reese from Philadelphia. Classic Philadelphia R&B soul. And let's see. Oh, Mo Banga, Latin trap artist out of North Philly, the Latin Trap Fire. And Isabella. She's a artist from New Jersey, singer.
Okay.
God, I hope I didn't leave anybody out.
If
It's weird. That can happen sometimes.
Absolutely. Text it to me. I'll put it in the show notes. I really appreciate your time today. This has been a blast. I haven't felt like I've really been doing an interview, but just kind of.
Oh, because I talk too much?
No, a chat with a friend, Yeah,
well, it's I like talking. I have to tell you, I am really impressed with what you're doing with mentoring and everything.